Okay. Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Gnomon School of Visual Effects, Games, and Animation for the second annual Substance Days Hollywood event. If you were here with us last night for Sebastian's keynote and the Art of Substance 2 gallery opening, hope you had a great evening, and we're happy to have you back with us this morning. I think people are still outside getting breakfast, so it'll take me a couple of minutes to get through this, and then we'll have some more people in here. If you did miss last night's keynote, you can actually watch it on live stream at livestream.com/Gnomon and on Algorithmic's YouTube channel, along with all of today's sessions, which we're streaming today too. So you can catch up tonight. If you want to do some networking throughout the day, you can always go watch them online later. If you're watching online today, we're going to be saving online questions for the Ask Algorithmic Anything session, which is scheduled for 4:30 today. So we'll open the live chat on live stream at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. So you can ask questions then. And you can also ask questions on Twitter using #Gnomon throughout the day, and we'll look out for those and save them for the end. And I believe the Algorithmic team will also be available on YouTube throughout the day, on the YouTube live stream, so you can chat to them there too. If you're here on the stage, we're going to try and take questions throughout the day because the schedule is so tightly packed. The Ask Us Anything session at 4:30 will actually be a great time to pitch your questions to the team. So if you don't get a chance to ask a question throughout the day, just hold on to it for then. We have some awesome prizes today, so for those watching online, you can share the live stream or YouTube event URL on Twitter using #Gnomon, and we'll select one lucky winner at random around lunchtime today, and they'll win a 1-year subscription to Substance, so that's access to the latest version of Substance Designer, Painter, B2M, and Source for 1 whole year, so super awesome. Get tweeting today. The same lucky winner is also going to win a 6-month subscription to the Gnomon Workshop Training Library, which is worth over $250, so it's pretty awesome. I'm losing my voice. We'll also have a final prize here in the stage for a lucky attendee, so we'll be handing out raffle tickets soon. If you don't get one by 4:30, just head out and grab one from the welcome desk. And that lucky winner is going to take home some cool Substance gear, so I believe hoodies, that kind of thing, as well as the 1-year Substance subscription. So make sure you stick around to the end of the day to be in with a chance to win that. Between each session, we'll have some short intermissions for you to take breaks, and we'll be setting up the next speaker then. And we'll be offering a campus tour at 12:30 p.m. So if anyone wants to go on that, explore the facilities, the classrooms. We have classes in action through till 10 p.m., so there's lots to see. Okay, so today's first session is with the awesome Wes McDermott, Integrations Product Manager at Algorithmic. So Wes is also going to be the MC for all of today's sessions and moderating questions when time allows. So let's have a big round of applause for Wes, and we'll get started with day 3. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining me this morning. So today, we're going to just take a look at stuff that's new in Substance. Just going to take kind of a relaxed look at some features. So this week, we launched Substance Painter 2017.2, and with that, we introduced a new referencing linking system, which we call the anchor points. And so what I want to do is just kind of, just deep dive a little bit more into this. And we're going to start by doing that just by looking at this effect. So if you've seen kind of our keynote, or if you've seen some of the tutorial video that we put out already, you'll notice that we've kind of been demoing this with this engine asset here. So for example, here I've got this paintable mask, and as I start to kind of paint on this, you can see that I'm basically able to take this stroke data, this paint data, and I'm able to drive a series of masks to reveal this damage across this. And this is what the new link layering system allows us to do. And so, like I said, we've been kind of just demoing this, but what I want to do today is I want to look at more of a step-by-step process on how this effect was created. Okay, so like I said, what we're going to do here is take a look at how we've got these 3 separate materials here. And we're going to be able to mask these materials, and then we're going to be able to drive these masks based on this paintable mask. So let's kind of put this together step by step. All right, so here we have this engine asset, and the first thing I'm going to do is just grab a smart material that I have. So this is the ship hull, the sub-hull, so we're going to just bring this here into the layer stack. And let me just talk a little bit about what this is. So here's our layer group. You can see here this is a fill layer, and this is using a substance material. This is this macro hull. And so this is the material that's producing. Now, on this material, you can see that there's a levels command here that's affecting this displacement channel. So here, you can see in my channels, there's a displacement option set here. And you can also come over here to your shader properties and adjust what this displacement is doing here. So like I said, we have this displacement channel. Now, on top of this, there's another adjustment here that's happening. Now, what this is actually just a fill. So if we take a look at what this adjustment is, you can see that there's a height, rough, and emissive channel. So for example, if I start to adjust my roughness, you can see that, well, we're starting to get, a kind of a more specular or reflection hit here on this metal. So here you notice that this says adjustments, and like I said, well, this is just a fill. So one of the things that we added that's new in 2017.2 is the ability to rename fill and paint effects. So for example, if I come over here to my effects button and I add a fill, you can see it, well, it says fill, but if I just double click in here, I can change this. So, for example, I can just call this adjust. So it just gives me, more of a visual clue on what this effect is supposed to be doing. And so, like I said, we can also do this with a paint effect as well. So if I come over to my effect button, I add paint. If I need to, I can, rename this as well. So maybe this is a mask, or it's whatever it's handling, its specific use. So that's what this is. This isn't a new effect. All it is, like I said, is a fill that's just been simply renamed. So this is creating the material that you see here. Now, there's also a mask to this. So, again, if you just right-click on this and add a black mask, that's what's happening here. And you'll see that there is a couple of effects, and this is making up what we refer to as the effect stack. So what I want to do is just kind of step through this a bit. Now, the first thing that you'll notice here at the bottom of the stack is a fill. Now, again, this fill effect has just been renamed to mask so that I can, quickly get a visual clue as to what the actual use of this is. And you'll notice that for the grayscale value, it's set to 1, which is pure white, which means it's basically like a white mask now. It's like a holdout mask. So if I start to just lower this, you can see the effect that this mask is having. So black, completely transparent, white, it's opaque. So if we set this around a value of, say, 0.5, so now you can see that we're starting to get a couple of other effects stacking on top of this to build up our overall effect. So just as a tip, if I want to see what this material is here in my viewport, I can hold down the Alt key and just left-click on this mask. And that puts me in mask view mode. So now I can see the result of what this is. So here you'll notice that I have a blur, just a little bit of blur intensity, and then another fill that's been set here to clouds 1. So it's just a grunge texture, and that's what's producing most of what's happening here with this noise. And then on top of that, there's a little levels effect here that's just kind of processing this range. So here's what the clouds look like without the levels, and now I'm just going to kind of crunch these values a bit here just to give this a bit more of a contrasted mask result. So now I'll just hit M on the keyboard, takes me back to my material mode, and again, I now have this little controller here which is going to drive my mask. So this is where anchors come into play, is instead of maybe adding or painting this mask here within this maybe adding like a paint effect and then trying to add, painting details here within this mask or using a generator, what I can do now is I can actually take data that I have already painted that's part of my layer stack, and I can drive this mask with that data from the layer. So one of the things I think is pretty cool about the anchors is, in all the previous versions of Painter, if you want to think of it this way, you had your layer stack, and you have like your painted data. So again, here, let's look at our whole layer here. So you've got like, this is like your material, and then you've got a mask. And those two guys were basically divided right down the middle. I mean, you can't really move data from one over to the other. But now with anchors, you can do that. So now we can start to associate bits of information over into this mask section. And it's not related just to masks either. We can also use anchors just within regular channels as well. So like I said, we have this mask, and now we want to start to be able to drive this mask based off some painted data. So what I'm going to do here in my layer stack is I'm just going to create a new kind of standard layer. This is just going to be a paintable layer that I can, well, paint on. So now we'll come over here to our material settings, and let me just disable all these channels. So I just have this white value. So again, this is going to act like my mask, basically. So white, black. So I'm just going to leave this here at pure white. And here, I'll call this mask. So now I have this layer, and like I said, I can start to paint on it. So we're just painting here. So this is what we have. Now, like I said, I'd like to be able to take this paint information and use this inside of my effect stack that I'm working with here. So what I need to first do is tell Substance Painter that I would like to be able to anchor this information and use this again. So basically make an anchor point for this. So I can right-click on this guy, and I can choose Add Anchor Point. You can also add it here as an effect. So if I click this button and add Anchor Point, it'll add it there as well. And so by default, the name of the anchor point just grabs the name to whatever layer you associated it with. So if I wanted to, I could change this or whatever, but I'm just going to leave it at mask for now. And you'll notice that underneath here we have this references section, and it says there's no references found. That's because we haven't established a relationship yet between what this anchor point is, well, going to be anchoring to. And that's here. This is where all of the referencing and the linking comes into play. So we have this information, and we're just going to paint. So here I just start to paint a stroke like this. So now if I come back over to this mask, instead of just using this grayscale value, I'm going to drive this by what I actually painted. So what I'll do is I'll click this grayscale button, and what happens is you'll see the mini shelf appears, just as it always has done in Substance Painter, but we now have this new tab called Anchor Points. So when I select Anchor Points, this is going to show all of the anchor points that are here are placed inside of my layer stack. And you'll notice that as I start to mouse over these guys, it highlights them here in the layer. So we just created this mask, and you can see it's highlighting where this anchor point is located. So I'm going to choose mask. Now, as soon as I do that, you can see that the mask, which is this fill, is now being driven by whatever I anchored it to, which in my case is just this paintable layer. So now I can go back and start to just continue to paint on this guy like this. So again, if we go back to our mask, you can also see that we have this ability here within this reference to this anchor point, a referenced channel that we want to look at. So as you recall, back here on this painted layer, we only painted color information, so our base color. Now, if we go back to our mask, again, you'll see reference channel is set to base color. If I had this set to something else like roughness, it's not going to work because there wasn't anything painted there. But if I did have roughness information, I could use it. So for example, let's say that somewhere in here, I had some rough information, and I wanted to use that roughness information to help drive a mask. I could do that. I could set an anchor and then set the reference channel to be roughness. So it's very, very powerful on how much control you have to set up these channels and how they link to each other or masks or however you want to set up an effect you're working on. In my case here, we're just going to set it back here to base color. Okay, so one other thing I want to kind of show you about this. So you'll notice that, okay, well, this worked, but there's kind of like this white kind of outline or kind of halo effect happening here. So what's going on with that? So for this to work, a trick is that you can come over into your layer stack here. I'm going to create a group for this guy, and I'll call this paint masking. And I'm going to take this mask layer and just pull this, or place this guy in here to this group. So now I've got the ability to toggle this mask layer on and off, and you'll notice that when I do that, it still is, the data is still there, it's still being referenced by the mask, and that white kind of fringe effect goes away. Okay, that's awesome, that's a good way to do that. However, you'll notice that since I disabled this layer, I can't paint on it anymore. So that's why I took this layer and I placed it here into a group. So what you'll do is I'll just enable this layer, come up to its group, and just turn off the group. So now I don't have that halo effect, but when I go back to my mask, I can continue to paint. All right, so here, let me just grab my eraser real quick and just erase all this out. So here, we just get rid of some of this guy. And grab our brush. Okay, so another way to kind of get a bit more realistic on this effect is that, so far we're painting this information, we've set everything up, but we're just using this default alpha. So what I'm going to do here in my brush settings is come over here to my flow and just set this to a pretty low value. So now what I can do, just using the flow, and in my case I'm using a mouse, so it'd be much better if I was using this Wacom tablet. But so I have this flow set to a low value. So now I'll start to paint. Here, let me undo that and set it even lower, something like this. So now I'll come in and you'll see that as I start to paint, I can really just barely start to build up this damage, and then as I start to paint back over it, I'm just kind of building it up as I go. So it's kind of a way to help control, how much damage we're putting on this just by using that flow. And then of course, I'm just using a default standard alpha, which is not very good. So here I'm going to come over to my brushes, and I'm going to grab this dirt brush here. And then what I'm going to do on the dirt brush is just increase the hardness, and I'll just lower my size down. And now I can come in and just start to paint this with just a little bit more grunge with it here. And again, I'm using my flow, so I'm kind of building this up little by little as I start to work. And so what we're doing now is, we've got one layer of this set. So this is our hull. And so we're just painting in some damage to reveal some paneling work underneath of that. And of course, I can go back to the material itself and make any adjustments. So again, we had our roughness adjustment, so maybe I'll make this, a bit more kind of reflective and so on. So again, it's just that ability to work with Painter in a non-destructive way that we have full access to all of our controls. All right, so that takes care of that first material. So now let's add another material to this guy. So again, what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to kind of erase out what I have, and we'll go back to our brush. All right, so let me go back to my Smart Materials, and here I'm just going to filter. Just gave these guys a name that I could filter out pretty quickly. So here's our ship hull. The next thing I'm going to grab is this fire. So let's take a look at this fire here. So we're just going to drag and drop and place this here into the layer stack. And if you're kind of new to Painter and you're wondering where I'm getting all this bloom and glow and everything, just to kind of show that real quick, if I come over to my display settings, you'll see that we have the ability to activate post effects. So this is using the Yebus 2 post effects rendering engine here just to display all this bloom and glow, and we can control that here with the glare. All right, so this is our ship fire here. Okay, so what I want to do now is just kind of step through what this material is. So if we look, this again is just a fill layer. And in this particular case, what it's doing is it's using that same substance, that macro hull. This time, here I'm on the fill layer, you can see that it's got an emissive color as a fill. So we've got our height, rough, emissive, and displacement enabled. And here we've got our emissive. And so an emissive channel was added. Here in my texture set settings, we'll click the plus button and choose just emissive. It's already been added, so you didn't see it there. And so now I can adjust, this emissive color here. If we, make it any kind of color we wanted here. But so we'll do something like this here. And then here you can see that on top of this guy is another fill effect here. This is just a clouds noise that's being added onto this here. And then on top of this, there's a levels effect, just so that we can just, do kind of like a post adjustment here over the values that are passing up this effect stack. So the effect stack, it always processes from the bottom upwards. So again, we have our emissive color, which is then being affected here by our fire. And see here, if we look at our emissive channel, you can see that for this fill effect, what's happening here, so this is what it would look like without the fire. So it has a noise, and the noise has its blending mode just set to subtract. So again, if you're kind of new to Painter, haven't seen this before, whenever you add a layer or an effect, they all have the ability to have a separate blending mode. And you can go and target the specific channel that you want to work with. So in this case, this is a fill layer, which means it's has more. It can have more than one channel enabled. So that's why I use this little drop down to target. Hey, fill layer. I want to take the emissive information out of this fill and just put that channel to subtractive. So that's where I'm getting that there. Okay, so that takes care of the material part. Let's take a look at the mask. And so here you'll see the mask created pretty similar to the whole material we just talked about. We have a mask. Here is a fill. Again, just a fill. It's just been renamed to mask. And here it is at full white. But as I start to dial this in, you can see that I can start to produce this effect here. So if we take a look at the actual mask itself, I'm just going to Alt left click on my mask again so we can see it. And we'll go down. So now this gives me like a control, like a kind of like a mask slider that I can dial this effect in and out. So this guy here just has a blur. Then it has a clouds noise that's set to overlay noise to create this. So here, if we just look at it like this. So here we have the first cloud set to overlay. We've got another clouds on top of that. Again, just a grunge map set to multiply. And then at the end, we're just going to kind of process these value ranges with just a levels effect on top. And so here's the mask that we're getting. So I'll hit M on the keyboard to take me back to my material mode. So just as we did before, we now want to tie this mask with the same painted layer. So again, this is something that's, that shows kind of the benefit of this workflow with this anchor system, is that we can now have one central layer that we're working on or we're painting information on, and we can actually have that information linked, not just to one, but any amount of layers that you want. So all I have to do in this case is go back to the mask. I'll hit my grayscale button. Again, I've got my anchor points tab and just select mask. And so when I do that, it's now set to use that reference channel for base color again. Just like I said, we're just painting on base color, so that's what we want to do. So now, as I start to go in and start to paint, so I'll paint. Remember I told you we've got our flow here, set it a little bit lower here. And now as I start to paint in this mask, you can see that both my sub-hull and the fire are both being driven by that single paintable layer here because of that anchor point. So that's how this is working here. All right, so let me just undo that. We'll keep it like this here. All right, so finally, the last thing we want to do is add the smoke part of this. So now let's grab the smoke, drag and drop, place this guy here into the layer stack, and once again, let's just run through so I can show you how this material was created. So we'll look at the layer group. We're going to look at the fill, so you can see that this guy here is just a simple fill layer, color, rough, and metal. And here's our rough, pretty high, no metallic, and then just has a simple base value. Now, for the mask itself, you can see again it has its own effect stack, and so let's kind of step through this guy. So here is the base, which is just the mask. It's a fill, and again, we can use this to kind of dial this effect on and off. Later, we're going to drive this with our anchor. So here, let me just turn off these guys, and we're going to look at what we have. So this here is another fill that's just using a grunge map that ships with Painter, Grunge Rust Fine. And you can see here that its blending mode is set to subtractive, and you can also adjust the opacity of this as well. Then on top of this, we'll add a blur. And then on top of that, we'll start to, like I said, we're just building this effect up. We're going to add another fill, which is just using a grunge map here, so grunge, plaster, cracked. And its blending mode is set to overlay, and then a slight adjustment here on the opacity. So in this case, I think I'm going to increase it a little bit more. Now, this is what the mask that we have so far. So let's take a look at the mask. So, kind of a lot of grayscale values. So what I'm going to do is just use levels here, just kind of, tweak this mask a bit more. So you see how we can control that. And then on top of that, we can just add a sharpen here. So again, it's just a fill effect up here at the top. So it's just adding a filter. So if we choose filter, oops, sorry about that. Filter, you'll see here that there is a sharpen filter. And let me find that guy. Even better, why don't I just search for it? And we'll lower the intensity down. All right, so I'll hit M on the keyboard to go back to my material mode, and this is just how the smoke was built up. All right, so like I said, same thing. Let's go back to our mask. Let's hit our grayscale button. Let's go to our anchor points, and let's choose our paintable mask. And so here we're going to go back to this guy. just grab my eraser here, start to erase this out. Whoops, I think I got a mistake on this guy. All right, bear with me for just a second. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I grabbed the wrong anchor. So in a case like this, which is good, when these kind of things happen, you can kind of see how to troubleshoot this. So, okay, this isn't working, right? What's happening here? So one thing I could do is I just, mouse over this. It's already kind of highlighting here in the layer stack where, where this is actually linked. So I can look at this and say, oh, wait, it's not linked to the right anchor. So what I really want to do is choose this anchor. So that was the problem there. Okay, so we'll go back to our mask, and we'll grab our brush, and now we can start to just kind of paint this effect in. So like I said, here, let me undo that. Let me go back to my flow, adjust this down pretty low. And so now I'm painting. You can see, well, we're getting some of this smoke, a little bit of damage. We'll go back over it again, kind of revealing a little bit more of this damage and so on. And then here we'll just cut into it a little bit more. And, like I said, you can just kind of build this effect up little by little just by using that flow setting there. And so that's how this effect was set up. So you can see that it's actually a pretty simple process. It just takes a little bit of getting used to because, like I said, this masking referencing system is pretty powerful. It allows you to do just so much here inside of Painter. So it just comes into the situation of just understanding, okay, I want to anchor this piece of information and I want to reference it somewhere else. Again, one of the tips that I can give about that is just make sure that you're just paying attention to what's being highlighted here inside the layer stack as you work. So that's going to kind of be our deep dive here into this effect that we kind of showed earlier this week. So I've got a bit more time. And so what I wanted to do now was kind of shift gears a bit and take a look at some things with Substance Designer. So 2 features that we released in the 2017 series that I thought were pretty good. So let me shift gears, and we're going to take a look here at Substance Designer. And this is 2017.1 right now is what I have installed already. But what I'm going to talk about is the ability to work with this skew baking. So let me come into this guy here, and I'm going to remove these masks. So we're going to do this all from scratch here. And so here, underneath my, my material, let's just reset this guy. Okay. So what I have here is just a low-res box, and then we have a high-res counterpart here, which looks like this. And so what we're going to do is bake this. And you'll notice that whenever you have something like this set up, we're going to bake, this kind of bolt piece like this. You'll see that it's going to cause this some skewing. And so what we added in Substance Designer's bakers was the ability to paint a skew mask in order to correct this. So I want to show you how that works. So here we have our low res, and first thing I'm going to do is just bake my normal map. So let's go into Bake Model Information. Another thing that you'll notice here is that we've redesigned the baking UI. This window is also a modal, non-modal, meaning that I can now come back, you can see, and start to continue to work here in Designer. Here, let me just minimize my view, and you can see that I can actually have this baker window open as I work now, which is kind of cool, so we can kind of go back and forth easily. Before, you were kind of trapped within this baker window, and you had to cancel it in order to get back to Designer. So here, let's go back into our Bake Model Information. Here, I've already added my high-definition mesh. I'm going to add my baker here was just the normal map from mesh. And you'll notice here, let me turn that guy off to start. You'll notice here that I've just set a frontal and rear value here. And now I'll just hit render selected baker. And so this guy bakes out here. All right, so here in the 2D view, you can see the normal map, and you'll also notice that right off the bat, you can see we're going to have some of these skewing problems. So now I'm just going to, just so we can visualize this, I'm just going to drag and drop this here into the 3D view. When I let go of my mouse, the shader channel window pops up, and I'm just going to set this to my normal. So here, when we look at this, here you can see the obvious problem. We have the skewing problem here. So now, in Substance Designer 2017, we can fix this. So let me show you how that works. What we want to do is we want to paint a mask that's going to tell Painter this is going to be where we need to do the skew correction. So if I just right-click on this guy, here, I'm going to add a node. I'm going to add a bitmap node, and I'm going to say from a new resource, and I'll just call this mask. And you can see here my width and height is set to 2K. I want to set this here to 2K because that's what I bake my normal map at. And then I'll just click OK. And so that's going to create this little bitmap node for me. Set this guy to grayscale here. And now I'm going to paint a mask. So in order to see what I'm doing, I'd like to be able to just add that normal map in the background. And so I've got this normal map. If I come over here to this background image, I can actually click this. Now I've already loaded the back. What happens when you click this button is that it asks you to browse to where you have your map you want to add in the background. So I can use this as like a template to paint on. So that's what I have here for this normal map in the background. Also, you have this slider so we can kind of dim the value here a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. So here I have a brush set on this bitmap painting tool, and it's set to white. And then what I'm going to do is come in and just very sloppy just paint a white area around these bolts where I want this mask correction to happen. So I'm just going to kind of do this pretty quick. Like I said, going to be sloppy. Got here and here. I could probably just make the brush a little bigger and then stamp it down. Let's see. Let's do that. All right, so we'll do this and this. This guy. Almost done. All right, so this is the skew mask that I've created here. All right, so now what I'm going to do is come back here to my normal map bake. I'll right-click, and I'm going to just go into my rebake option here. And so now I have the new option called Use Skew Correction. And so I'm going to enable this, and then now I have an option here to do where's the skew map? Can I load this? So if I click this button, I can load it either from a file, an external file, so maybe you've painted this somewhere else, or I can say from resource. And so in my case, I have a resource here. It's this mask that I created, so that's what we're going to use. So here we have this set up. Now I'm just going to do render selected baker. And we'll just cancel that window. And you can see here in my 3D view, the skew has been corrected. Let's take a look at the normal map. So we'll double click. Load this guy up here into our 2D view, and here you can see the normal has now been corrected. So we can use this skew map correction to fix any of these skewing issues that you run into. And like I said, that's new in Designer 2017. So there's one other thing that I wanted to show you, which I actually really like this feature a lot. So I'm going to come over here into a substance that I recently worked on. And let me come over here to my material. Tiling here. Okay. So this is a substance that I had just been working on, and it's just kind of like this wood substance. And so what we can do now is we can, well, let me just take a step back. We've always been able to work with preset files and substances. So you could create a preset file, and you could load that into, say, Substance Player, or some of the integrations, the Modo and Maya support the preset files. And so what those allow you to do is say that you had your substance and you made some tweak changes to the parameters, then you could save a preset file. So if you shared that with someone else, or maybe you did, maybe you had like 20 parameters and you did a lot of tweaks, and you're like, oh man, this looks really good. I'd save it so you could call it up really easily again. So that's what that did. However, we had that system in place, but we didn't have a way to create the presets directly in Substance Designer, which made the process very uncomfortable. However, now in 2017, we've added the ability for you to create your own presets that get embedded in the Substance file when you publish. And like I said, I really love this feature. So here you can see that I've got parameters. In my case, I don't have like a ton of parameters, but this is still going to help me to create variations. So what I'm going to do is over here for my input parameters, I'm going to click this little page button, and that puts me into preview mode. So in case, again, if you're new to Designer or maybe didn't know about this trick, I recently just found out about it not too long ago. So you can come in and just start to tweak with your controls, and it gives you an idea of what your little user interface is going to look like. So like I said, I could come in here and I could tweak my controls to come up with some type of preset. Now you'll notice we have this drop-down menu here at the top, and I've already created several presets. So for example, if I click my presets now, I can see that, well, I've got a water moss. Let me choose that preset, and then it automatically adjusts my substance. So now I've got my preset ready to go. And then I can come in and say, okay, no, I want to do the dry dirt 01. That was my default. Let's just do dry dirt 04. Oh, actually, that was the same one. I may have broken something here. Let's see if watermark. Yep, sorry about this, guys. I actually copied this from another machine, so it looks like my other presets they didn't get they're not saved correctly. So sorry about that. But the water, moss, and my default should work. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so anyways, let me show you how this system actually works. So let's say that let's just make one. Let's say that I want to make a new preset. What I'm going to do right now is come over to my parameters, and you'll notice that we have this new kind of pin icon here. And so what this is a pin, and it tells the system that we want to basically enable or set this parameter to be something that can be saved. So in my case, I might say, okay, I want to take my plank amount, my color variation, let's see, my dirt options, my moss, and my water. I'm just going to enable all these parameters here. So now all these guys are basically tagged so that they can be saved in the preset. So now if I come back and start to tweak something, hopefully it's not my parameter that broke. So no, I think it's okay. So here I'm just playing around. Let's see. Okay, maybe I'll try this color variation. And then I might come over to the dirt level and just increase this a bit. Maybe lower I think that's a little too much. But you can see here the idea is that I'm just trying to come up with a new variation or preset. And then say, let's come over and just add a little bit of this moss on here and lower the contrast. And say, okay, that looks good. This is something like I want to use. So now that I have this set, I can come over and just click this plus button, and you can see that it creates this preset 8 for me. So if I click this gear icon, I now have this editor that allows me to change as well as reorganize the presets that I have. So for example, if I want to remove some of these presets, these ones that aren't actually saved to anything, I'm going to do that. So now I've got default, water, moss, and then this new guy here, which is, I don't know, I'll just say var variation, we'll call it 03. And then I can actually associate some user tags with this as well. Let's say that, if I wanted to put this one above, you can just drag and drop these guys around to do this. So that's how I create the preset. And then here I'll just going to jump out of my preset mode here. Oops, actually I didn't mean to do that because I wanted to show the preset work. All right, so here you can see now I went back into that preview mode and, whoops, sorry about that, closed it up. Went back into that preview mode. We've got our water moss, which was working. And then here we've got our new variation number 3. So graphs just recomputing, and so now here's our new variation. So again, this is, like I said, a great feature for when you're creating your substances. It could also not even be a material. Maybe it's a utility node that you create that does something like, whoops, sorry about that. Wow, I had a timer going so I could try to really hit this right. So, like I said, you could have like your like a utility node that maybe does some type of scaling or transform, and then you could actually have a couple different variations or presets saved with that. So it's like a transform on the X or the transform Y preset for this, and times 2 or whatever, to give your users that are gonna be using your utility nodes ways to change and work with presets. So like I said, it's a really cool feature that you'll end up using a lot. So that's going to conclude my presentation, just taking a new look at some of the new features in Substance. We talked about Designer, we talked about Painter. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining me for the first session. We've got a lot of great sessions planned for the day. So look forward to seeing you guys the rest of the day. If you have any questions, all of us here on staff, the purple shirt staff in the back, we'd be happy to talk to you about anything. So let us know if you need anything. Thanks a lot, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.